On October 15, 1944, three American P-51 Mustangs took off from Bodney Airfield in England for a routine patrol over occupied Belgium. The weather was perfect, the pilots were experienced, the planes were serviced and fueled. They never came back. No distress signals were received. No enemy engagement was reported. No wreckage was found. Lieutenants Daniel Garrett, Francis Holbrook, and Robert Whelan simply vanished from the sky at 14:47, their radio transmissions cutting off mid-sentence. The Army searched for 2 weeks before declaring them missing, presumed dead. Their families buried empty coffins. But in 2009, excavation for a Belgian wind farm uncovered something 12 feet beneath a field that had been untouched since the war. Three P-51 Mustangs arranged in a perfect defensive triangle, their fuselages intact, their pilots still strapped in their seats. The planes hadn't crashed. They'd been buried. When investigators opened Danny Garrett's cockpit, they found his remains clutching a torn journal page against his chest, 4 words written in his shaking hand. "They made us disappear." What the recovery team discovered next would reveal why the Allied command had erased all records of that patrol, why 3 pilots' families had been lied to for 65 years, and why someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury 3 planes and their pilots in a Belgian field, rather than let anyone discover what they'd seen on October 15, 1944. October 5, 2019. Indianapolis. Emma Garrett stood in her childhood home, staring at a trunk she'd never seen before. Her father's funeral had been that morning. Sudden heart attack, no warning, gone at 75. Now she was sorting through his things, finding the predictable remnants of a quiet life. Tax returns, photo albums, his reading glasses still bookmarked in a Tom Clancy novel he'd never finish. The trunk was in the attic, shoved behind Christmas decorations and boxes labeled Emma's school things. Military green, padlocked, her grandfather's name stenciled on the side. Lieutenant Daniel Garrett, USAAF. She'd never known it existed. The padlock was rusted but cheap. 3 hits with a hammer and it cracked open. Inside, the smell hit her first, old leather and gun oil, something metallic and preserved. Her grandfather's dress uniform, folded with military precision. His wings. His Purple Heart, which confused her. He'd never come home wounded. He'd never come home at all. Under the medals, a leather journal, its pages yellowed but intact. The first entry was dated October 1st, 1944. Her grandfather's handwriting, careful and slanted. 2 weeks until we ship out to Bodney. Frankie says the Germans are finished, that we'll be home by Christmas. Bobby believes him. They're good boys, both of them. Best wingmen a pilot could ask for. If something happens to me, at least Margaret will know I flew with brothers. Emma sat on the attic floor, reading by the light of her phone. She'd grown up knowing only the basics. Her grandfather had died in the war, his plane was never found. Her grandmother Margaret had remarried in 1947 to the man Emma had called Grandpa Bill. But this journal made Danny Garrett real, 24 years old, missing his pregnant wife, worried about his friends. She flipped ahead, scanning entries about missions, close calls, descriptions of England that sounded like another planet. Then she found October 14, 1944. The handwriting was different here, pressed hard into the page. Something's wrong with tomorrow's patrol route. Changed last minute, no explanation. We're being sent over Sector 7, which has been restricted for 2 months. Colonel Morrison called me paranoid, but Frankie noticed it too. The coordinates don't match any known German positions. We're not hunting anything out there. Bobby's nervous. Kid's got instincts like a cat, and he's been pacing all evening. Says his teeth hurt, which is what he always says when something bad's coming. Told him it's routine patrol, nothing special. Didn't mention that someone came for our gun cameras this afternoon. Took them for maintenance. In 13 months, nobody's ever touched our gun cameras before a patrol. If something happens tomorrow, tell Margaret I... The entry stopped mid-sentence. Emma turned the page. Blank. Every page after October 14th was empty, except for one thing, a photograph tucked into the back cover. 3 young men in flight suits, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. Someone had written on the back, Danny, Frankie, Bobby. October 14, 1944. Last night at the Eagle's Nest. The last night. Her phone buzzed. Her sister Karen texting about estate paperwork. Emma ignored it, staring at the photograph. Her grandfather was the tall one in the middle, movie star handsome with dark hair and her father's exact same crooked smile. Frankie Holbrook on his left, stockier, laughing at something off camera. Bobby Whelan on the right, barely out of his teens, trying to look tough, but his eyes gave him away. He was scared. They'd all been scared. Emma pulled out her laptop, searching for information about the missing patrol. The official record was sparse. 3 P-51 Mustangs lost over Belgium, October 15, 1944. No enemy contact reported. Search efforts unsuccessful. Presumed shot down by anti-aircraft fire, but her grandfather had written they weren't hunting anything. The route had been changed, the gun cameras removed. She kept digging, cross-referencing squadron records, mission logs, anything digitized from the 357th Fighter Group. Then she found it buried in a database of declassified documents. A report filed October 16, 1944, by Colonel James Morrison. Lieutenants Garrett, Holbrook, and Whelan failed to return from routine patrol. Last radio contact at 1447 indicated no enemy engagement. Search teams found no wreckage in assigned patrol sector. Recommendation: list as MIA, presumed KIA. No further resources to be allocated to recovery. 1 day. They'd searched for 1 day. Emma found herself angry, suddenly and irrationally furious at this Colonel Morrison who'd given up on 3 men so quickly. She searched his name, found his service record. Promoted to general after the war. Died in 1978, full military honors, buried at Arlington. But there was something else, a footnote in his biography. Morrison had been investigated in 1946 for irregularities in wartime intelligence operations, but cleared of all charges. The details were still classified. Emma's phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. Hello? Is this Emma Garrett? An elderly man's voice, paper thin but steady. Yes, who's... My name is Walter Holbrook. I knew your grandfather. I've been waiting 75 years for someone from his family to call. Emma's heart stopped. You're Frankie's brother. I am. 98 years old next month, if you can believe it. I heard about your father's passing. My condolences. But Emma, there are things you need to know about what happened to them. Things I promised I'd never tell unless someone asked the right questions. What questions? The ones your grandfather was asking the night before he died. About why they were being sent to Sector 7. About what was really there. His voice dropped. Can you come to Chicago? Some things shouldn't be said over the phone. Emma looked at the photograph again. 3 young men on their last night alive. I can be there tomorrow. Good. Bring the journal? And Emma? Whatever else was in that trunk, bring that too. Your grandfather was smarter than they gave him credit for. If he kept something hidden all these years, there was a reason. After Walter hung up, Emma went back to the trunk. Under the uniform, wrapped in oilcloth, she found what he meant. Her grandfather's service pistol, still loaded. A map of Belgium with red marks in Sector 7. And strangest of all, a German officer's ring with an inscription she couldn't read. Trophies from kills she'd assumed at first, but Danny Garrett had disappeared October 15, 1944. These items were dated October 16th. Someone had put them in his trunk after he was already gone. October 6, 2019. Chicago. The Lakeshore Senior Living Facility smelled like disinfectant and cafeteria food, but Walter Holbrook's room was different. Old Spice and leather, books stacked on every surface. He was waiting in a wheelchair by the window, and when Emma entered, she saw Frankie's face in his, aged but unmistakable. You look like Danny, he said immediately. Same eyes. Probably break hearts the same way, too. He gestured to a chair. Sit. We have a lot to cover, and I don't have many clear days left. Emma pulled out the journal. Walter's hand shook as he touched it. October 14th. I remember that date like my own birthday. Frankie called me that night from the base. 3 in the morning my time, but he had to talk to someone. Walter's eyes went distant. Said they were being sent to Sector 7, asked me to remember that, if anything happened. What was in Sector 7? Officially? Nothing, just Belgian farmland, recently liberated. But Frankie had friends in intelligence. Real intelligence, not the sanitized briefings pilots got. Walter pulled out his own folder, hands steadier now with purpose. My brother sent me this letter, October 10th, 1944. Had to use our childhood code to write it. We made it up playing spies in the backyard. The letter looked like mundane military correspondence about food and weather, but Walter had penciled in translations between the lines. Project ongoing. Scientists relocated. Living cargo. Scientists? Emma asked. That's what we thought at first. Operation Paperclip before Paperclip officially existed, grabbing German researchers before the Russians could. But that wasn't it. Walter showed her another document, this one from 1946. After the war, I did some digging. Sector 7 had been deliberately kept off Allied bombing runs since July 1944. Even when German forces moved through there, we never touched it. Emma studied the map. They were protecting something. Or someone. Walter wheeled himself to his closet, pulled out a box from the bottom shelf. This came in the mail November 1944. No return address. Inside was a photograph, an aerial view of what looked like a small compound, barely visible through trees, but clear enough to see the guard towers, the double fences, and in the corner of the photo, part of a wing with a visible serial number. Danny's plane. This was taken October 15th, 1944, Walter said. Your grandfather found something he wasn't supposed to see. October 15th, 1944. 6 a.m. Bodney Airfield, England. Danny Garrett couldn't shake the feeling. His teeth didn't hurt like Bobby claimed his did, but something was off. The morning briefing had been too quick, Morrison barely looking at them as he pointed to the map. Routine patrol, Sector 7. Radio check every 15 minutes. That was it. No weather report, no intelligence update, no mention of why they were suddenly cleared for restricted airspace. Frankie caught his arm after briefing. Danny, this stinks. I know. We could have mechanical problems, all 3 of us. Tragic coincidence. Danny looked across the field where Bobby was doing his pre-flight check, thorough as always, despite being the youngest. Kid still wrote his girlfriend's name on his plane before every flight. Sarah. Good girl from Iowa who sent cookies every month. We go, Danny said, but we go careful. And we document everything. Gun cameras are gone. I know, but I've got my Kodak. Danny patted his flight jacket where the small camera sat. Anniversary present from Margaret. Wasn't supposed to bring it, but you're not stupid. Frankie grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. If we see something, we photograph it. Then we come home and ask questions. They walked to their planes, ground crew finishing final checks. Danny's crew chief, Sergeant Peterson, pulled him aside. Lieutenant, about your fuel. What about it? Peterson looked uncomfortable. Had orders to give you extended range tanks. All 3 of you. That's for long-range escort duty, not a patrol. Danny's stomach tightened. Extended range meant they were going somewhere far and staying a while. Or someone wanted to make sure they had enough fuel to reach somewhere specific. Thanks, Peterson. Sir? Peterson grabbed his arm as he turned. That thing you asked me to look into last week? About requisition orders? Yeah? Came from way up. Pentagon level. Peterson's voice dropped. Whatever you're doing today, someone in Washington personally signed off on it. October 6th, 2019. Chicago. Continued. The Pentagon? Emma looked up from the journal. But this was just a patrol. Walter laughed, bitter and short. Nothing was just anything in October 1944. The war was almost won. Everyone was grabbing what they could before it ended. Intelligence, scientists, research. He paused. And prisoners. Prisoners? That compound in Sector 7 wasn't German, it was ours. Ultra-classified, completely off the books. We were holding people there, Emma, people we didn't want anyone to know we had. Emma felt cold. Who? That's the $20 million question, isn't it? Frankie thought German scientists at first, but then he found out about the medical supplies being shipped there. Massive amounts. Either we were treating a lot of injured people, or what? Walter's face darkened. Or we were doing something that required a lot of medical equipment. Something that needed doctors and isolation and absolute secrecy. Emma's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or end up like your grandfather. She showed Walter. He didn't look surprised. They're still watching, he said quietly. 75 years later, and someone still cares about what happened in Sector 7. He gripped her hand with surprising strength. Your grandfather found something there, something worth killing 3 good men to keep quiet. And Emma? I don't think they were shot down. I think they were brought down. What do you mean? Walter wheeled back to his desk, pulled out a technical manual from 1944. See this? P-51 Mustang fuel system. Now, Peterson, the crew chief, he told me something after the war. Said he found something odd when he was doing maintenance logs that morning. All 3 planes had been serviced the night before by mechanics he didn't recognize. They'd installed something in the fuel systems. Governors, they said, to regulate flow. But governors don't go where they installed them. What goes there are fuel line cutoffs, remote activated, the kind you'd install if you wanted to shut down an engine from a distance. Emma stared at him. You're saying someone sabotaged their planes? I'm saying 3 planes don't lose power at the exact same second from mechanical failure. I'm saying gun cameras don't get removed for routine patrols. And I'm saying Danny Garrett was too good a pilot to just disappear unless someone wanted him to. Walter pulled out one more photograph. This one showed 3 young women at a funeral holding hands. Margaret Garrett, Bobby's Sarah, and a woman Emma didn't recognize. Frankie's girl Linda, Walter explained. This was taken at the memorial service, November 1944. See Margaret's expression? She's not grieving. She's angry. Because the night before this photo, she got Danny's last letter, mailed October 15th, the morning of the patrol. Walter handed her the letter, still in its envelope, postmarked October 15th, 1944, 5:30 p.m. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then I was right to be worried. We're being sent somewhere today that doesn't make sense. The colonel is lying about why. Someone removed our gun cameras so we can't record what we see. I'm going anyway because I'm a soldier and those are my orders. But I'm not going stupid. I've hidden something in my footlocker. Peterson will get it to you. It's proof that we were sent deliberately to find something, or to be silenced for asking too many questions. Know that I love you and our baby more than life itself. But sometimes a man finds something bigger than his own life, something that needs to be exposed even if it costs everything. If I don't come home, ask Walter about Sector 7. Ask him about the compound, and ask him why American planes have been protecting a German operation for 3 months. All my love. Danny Emma's hands were shaking. A German operation? But you said it was ours. Walter's smile was grim. That's what we were supposed to think. But Danny figured it out. That's why they had to disappear. All 3 of them, that same day, before they could tell anyone what they'd really found. He pointed to the journal. Turn to the back cover. Feel the binding. Emma did. There was something hard under the leather. With Walter's penknife, she carefully cut the stitching. A small key fell out, along with a strip of microfilm. Danny was always clever, Walter said softly. Too clever for his own good. The microfilm was old but intact. Walter had an ancient reader in his closet. Been waiting to use this, he said. The images flickered to life. Aerial photographs, clearer than the one Walter had. The compound in Sector 7. But these showed more detail. Guard towers with American soldiers, trucks with U.S. Army markings, and in one photo, visible through a window, medical equipment and what looked like operating tables. "Dear God," Emma whispered. "What were they doing there?" "That," Walter said, "is what your grandfather died trying to find out." "And Emma?" "Someone went to enormous trouble to bury those planes and those boys rather than let them be found. Because even dead, they were evidence." "Evidence of what?" Walter looked out his window at Lake Michigan, gray and endless. October 15th, 1944. Your grandfather's last radio transmission was at 2:47 p.m. Said they were investigating something unusual below. Then nothing. But here's what nobody knows. I had a friend in the radio corps. He heard something else at 2:48 p.m. Not from our planes, from the ground, in English. Someone said, "Targets acquired. Shutting them down now." Emma felt sick. They were murdered. Yes, but by who, and to protect what? Walter gripped her hand again. "That key Danny hid?" "I recognize it. It's for a safety deposit box. Swiss style, probably set up through intelligence channels. Whatever else your grandfather found, he locked it away. And if it still exists." "Then someone's been paying to keep that box active for 75 years, Emma finished. "Someone who's still sending threatening texts," Walter added. "Someone who still has power." Emma's phone rang. Unknown number again. This time she answered. "Miss Garrett." A woman's voice, cultured, elderly. "My name is Ilse Weber. I live in Belgium. I saw the planes fall in 1944. I know where they buried your grandfather, and I know why. Can you come to Brussels? There are things that shouldn't be forgotten, no matter how much certain people wish they would disappear." Emma looked at Walter. He nodded. "I'll be there in 2 days," she said. After she hung up, Walter handed her a card. "My nephew. Former Army intelligence. If something happens to me before you get back, call him. He knows enough to help." "You think something might happen?" Walter smiled sadly. "I'm 98 years old, and I just told you secrets people have killed to protect. Yes, Emma, I think something might happen. But frankly, my dear, it's about damn time. I've been carrying this alone for too long." As Emma left, Walter called out, "The journal entry, October 14th. Danny never finished his sentence about Margaret. Want to know what he was going to write?" She turned back. "Tell Margaret I was right. We weren't sent to patrol. We were sent to disappear. Frankie told me that. Danny said it that night at the Eagle's Nest pub, like he already knew." Emma felt the weight of the key in her pocket, the microfilm in her bag. 3 boys who'd known they were flying into a trap but went anyway, because they were soldiers, because they trusted their country, because they never imagined their own side would kill them. She had a plane to catch. October 8th, 2019. Brussels, Belgium. Ilse Weber lived in a townhouse that had survived 2 wars, its bones older than memory. She answered the door herself, 93 years old, but standing straight, her eyes sharp as winter. "You have his face," she said immediately. "Danny's bones, his way of standing. Come." Her sitting room was a museum of carefully preserved history. Photographs covered one wall, resistance fighters, liberation celebrations, and one that made Emma stop. 3 P-51 Mustangs, flying in perfect formation over Belgian countryside. October 15th, 1944, Ilse said. "I took that photo. I was 17, working with the resistance, documenting German movements, but these weren't German planes." She poured tea with steady hands, then sat across from Emma. "I need to tell you about Project Paperclip," she began. "The real one, not what they put in history books." Walter mentioned that, the operation to recruit German scientists. Started earlier than they admit, much earlier. By October 1944, Americans were already grabbing anyone useful. Scientists, yes, but also doctors, especially doctors who'd been working in the camps. Emma's stomach turned. Concentration camp doctors? The ones doing medical research. Experiments on prisoners. Your government wanted that research, Emma. The data from hypothermia studies, high-altitude tests, disease immunity. Ilse's voice was flat, factual. But some of these doctors were too valuable to wait for war's end. So they made deals, protection in exchange for cooperation. And Sector 7 was where they kept them, a transition facility hidden in liberated Belgium, close enough to Germany to extract targets, far enough from the front lines to be safe. She stood, pulled down a map. Here. The compound was here. After the war, it became farmland again. But in October 1944, it was the most secret American facility in Europe. October 15, 1944, 2:30 p.m., over Belgium. "Danny, you seein' this?" Frankie's voice crackled through the radio. Below them, where there should have been empty fields, was a complex of buildings surrounded by double fencing, guard towers at the corners, American vehicles in the yard, and something else, a medical truck with Red Cross markings, but the cross had been painted over hastily. "I see it," Danny replied, pulling out his camera. "Bobby, maintain altitude. We're just observing." "Boss, we shouldn't be here," Bobby said, his voice tight. "This is way off our patrol route." He was right. They'd been flying for 90 minutes, well into Sector 7, when they'd spotted the smoke. Not battle smoke, something industrial, like burning medical waste. Danny had made the call to investigate. Now, circling at 8,000 feet, he wished he hadn't. Through his camera lens he could see people in the yard, some in American uniforms, others in white coats, and in a corner, behind another fence, figures in striped clothing. Prisoners. "Jesus Christ," Frankie breathed. "Danny, those are—" "I know what they are." Danny's hands were steady on the camera, clicking frame after frame. "Mark coordinates. We need to—" The engine coughed. "Danny?" Bobby's voice sharp now. "Danny, I'm losing power." "Me too," Frankie said. "What the hell—" Danny's engine died completely. No warning, no smoke, just sudden silence. The propeller windmilled uselessly. He tried the restart. Nothing. Tried switching fuel tanks. Nothing. "All three of us?" Frankie's voice was incredulous. "That's impossible." But it was happening. 3 planes, 3 dead engines, all at the same instant. Danny's mind raced through the checklist even as his plane began its glide toward Earth. No engine meant no hydraulics. Limited control. They had maybe 6 minutes before they hit the ground. "Stay together," he ordered. "Triangular formation. We're going to put these birds down in that field to the northeast. Bobby, you call it in." "Radio's dead too," Bobby reported, and Danny could hear the kid fighting panic. Of course it was. Whatever had killed their engines had killed their electronics too. They were flying dead metal through Belgian sky, and somebody below was watching. October 8, 2019. Brussels. Continued. "I saw them coming down," Ilse said. 3 planes in formation. No smoke, no battle damage. Like birds that had forgotten how to fly. They passed right over our position. She pulled out a leather journal, her teenage handwriting still visible. "I wrote everything. Time, 2:47 p.m. 3 American fighters, gliding northeast. No engine sound. Pilots visible, still alive, fighting for control." She looked up. "That's important, Emma. They were alive, conscious, trying to save their planes." "Where did they crash?" "That's the thing. They didn't crash. They landed. Hard, yes, but controlled. In Farmer Mize's fallow field, about 2 kilometers from the compound. I ran there with my camera." She showed Emma another photograph. 3 Mustangs on the ground, arranged in their defensive triangle, propellers bent, but fuselages intact. And in the distance, trucks approaching. American trucks. "They got there fast," Ilse said. "Too fast. Like they were waiting." "Did you see the pilots?" Ilse's face darkened. "I saw them drag Danny from his cockpit. He was fighting them, shouting something about prisoners, about evidence. They hit him with a rifle butt." She paused. "He went down, but he was breathing." All 3 were breathing when they put them in the truck. Emma felt cold. They were alive? Very much alive. Injured from the landing, but walking, talking. Your grandfather kept saying, "I have photographs. People need to know." Then the officer, a colonel I think, said something I'll never forget. "Dead men don't have photographs." "Morrison," Emma whispered. "Colonel James Morrison?" Yes, that was the name. Morris and Ilse gripped Emma's hand. They drove the pilots back toward the compound. But here's what no one knows. I followed. Through the woods, staying hidden. I had to know what they'd do. She stood, walked to her window overlooking a peaceful street. The trucks went to a barn about half a kilometer from the main compound. They dragged the boys inside. I could hear shouting. Danny's voice angry, then Frankie's trying to reason. Then Bobby, poor Bobby, just asking why. Then what? Gunshots, 3 of them, spaced out, maybe 10 seconds apart. Emma closed her eyes. Her grandfather had been executed, not shot down in combat, not killed in a crash, murdered by his own side. But that's not the end, Ilse continued, because an hour later I saw them bringing the bodies back out. And Emma, they were putting them back in the planes, strapping them into their cockpits. I realized they were going to bury them, make it look like they'd crashed and been buried by locals, or hidden. No bullet wounds to the head would show on remains after years underground. But the journal page, the one that said, "They made us disappear." Ilse smiled grimly. Your grandfather was cleverer than they knew. When they were dragging him from his plane, I saw him shove something into his jacket. I think he wrote that during the landing, when he knew they were being brought down deliberately. His last act of defiance. Emma pulled out the key Walter had given her. He had this hidden in his journal. Ilse examined it. Swiss bank, probably Zurich. There's a number engraved. See? That's your box number. She looked up. Your grandfather set up a contingency, something they couldn't destroy even if they killed him. But how? When? The intelligence services had ways. Black accounts, hidden deposits. If Danny was working with intelligence, and I think he was, given what he found, he could have set this up weeks before. Ilse moved to her desk, pulled out a card. This man can help. Swiss banker, very discreet. His grandfather helped resistance fighters hide assets during the war. Emma took the card. Hans Muller, private banking, Zurich. There's one more thing, Ilse said. She pulled out a manila envelope aged and sealed with wax. October 16, 1944, a man came to our safe house. American intelligence, but not regular army. He gave me this, said to keep it safe. Said someday someone would come asking about the 3 pilots. He said to give them this. Emma opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, Subject, Operation Prometheus. Classification, ultra-secret date, October 1st, 1944. Phase 1 complete. German medical research personnel successfully extracted and relocated to Facility 7. Cooperation achieved through Project Leverage, their families held in adjacent compound. Phase 2 initiating. Research to continue under American supervision. Initial subjects acquired from liberated camps. Cover story. Treating survivors. Reality. Continuing German immunity and enhancement studies under U.S. control. Risk assessment. 3 pilots from 357th showing unusual interest in sector. Garrett asking questions about restricted zones. Recommend permanent solution if they investigate. Authorization, J. Morrison, Colonel, U.S. Army Intelligence. Emma's hands were shaking. They were experimenting on Holocaust survivors? Using Nazi doctors to do it, Ilse confirmed. Your grandfather found the proof, and they killed him for it. Emma's phone rang, Walter's nephew. Miss Garrett? I'm sorry to tell you this, but Walter passed away this morning. Heart failure, they said. But Miss Garrett, he was fine yesterday, and his room has been searched. Someone was looking for something. Emma looked at Ilse, who was already standing, moving with surprising speed for her age. They know you're here, the old woman said. We need to go. Now. As they left through the back door, Emma saw a black car pulling up to the front. 2 men got out, moving with military precision despite their civilian clothes. My car's around the corner, Ilse said. We're going to Zurich. Whatever your grandfather hid in that bank, we're getting it before they do. As they drove away, Emma looked back to see the men breaking into Ilse's house. 75 years later, and someone was still willing to commit crimes to keep this secret. Why? She asked. Why does it still matter? Ilse's laugh was bitter. Because Operation Prometheus didn't end in 1944. It evolved, changed names, changed locations, but never stopped. Your grandfather found the beginning of something that's still happening. And Emma? Some of the people involved are still alive, still powerful, still protected. She handed Emma a loaded pistol from her glove compartment. Your grandfather couldn't shoot back. You can. The road to Zurich stretched ahead, and somewhere behind them, hunters were already following. October 9th, 2019. Swiss border. They ditched Ilse's car in Strasbourg, switching to a rental under a fake name Ilse produced with disturbing ease. Resistance habits die hard, she'd said. Now, approaching Zurich at dawn, Emma kept checking the mirrors while Ilse dozed in the passenger seat, pistol still in her lap. Emma's phone had been buzzing with texts from unknown numbers. Stop now. This is your only warning. Then, your grandfather was a traitor who had to be silenced. And finally, you have 1 hour to turn around. She'd turned the phone off after that. We're here, Ilse said, suddenly alert as they entered Zurich's financial district. Park underground, never on the street. The bank was old money incarnate, marble and brass, hushed voices, a place where fortunes older than countries slept in vaults. Hans Muller was waiting, having responded to Ilse's encrypted message sent from a gas station payphone. Miss Garrett, he said quietly, leading them to a private elevator. My grandfather helped yours establish this account in September 1944. We've been maintaining it ever since, per his instructions. For 75 years. The account was well funded, and the instructions were very specific. Only blood family could access it, and only with the original key. He glanced at the men in suits watching from the lobby. You have followers? Can they stop us? Not here. Swiss banking laws are absolute, but afterward. He led them deeper into the building, past modern offices, into older sections, pre-war architecture. Your grandfather was paranoid, justifiably it seems. The box is in our oldest vault, October 15th, 1944, 2:45 p.m., moments before engine failure. Danny had seconds to decide. Below them, the compound sprawled like a cancer on Belgian soil. His camera was almost out of film, but he'd gotten enough. Proof of American trucks at a secret facility. Proof of prisoners in striped uniforms. Proof of what looked like medical experiments continuing under new management. He pulled out his notebook, scrawling fast. They made us disappear. No, that was wrong. They hadn't done it yet, but they would. He could feel it in his bones, the way Bobby felt danger in his teeth. The removed gun cameras, the isolation, the extended fuel tanks that Peterson had warned him about. He tore the page out, folded it small, shoved it inside his jacket just as the engine died. Then, falling through Belgian sky, he made a choice. The microfilm from his camera, he pulled it out, wrapped it in waterproof cloth from his survival kit, and hid it in his boot. If they searched him, they'd find the camera. They might not check his boots. Stay with me, he called to Frankie and Bobby, though the radios were dead. But they knew. 3 sets of hands fighting dead controls, working to keep the planes level, to stay together, even as they fell. October 9th, 2019. Zurich continued. The vault was a cavern of steel and shadow. Box 4447 was small, unremarkable, one among thousands. Emma's key turned smoothly despite the decades. Inside, 3 reels of microfilm, a sealed envelope, and a Colt 45 with 1 bullet missing. Muller produced a microfilm reader. We keep them for the older accounts. The first reel flickered to life. Documents, hundreds of them. Transfer orders for German medical personnel, signed by Colonel Morrison. Agreements for continued research under American supervision. Lists of test subjects, identified only by numbers, but with a notation. Sourced from liberated camps, told they're receiving treatment. Dear God, Emma whispered. The second reel was photographs. The compound from every angle. the medical facilities, and then the horror. Emaciated figures on operating tables, American doctors observing while German researchers worked. One photo showed Morrison himself watching through observation glass as someone operated on a skeletal child. "Your grandfather got inside," Ilse breathed. "How?" The third reel answered that. Danny's handwritten report. September 30th, 1944. Made contact with intelligence officer who claims Morrison is running unauthorized operation. Gave me camera, press credentials. Says he needs proof before he can act. Will attempt to infiltrate Sector 7 on next patrol. October 8th, 1944. Morrison suspects something. Moved up our patrol date. Removing gun cameras. This is a setup. October 14th, 1944. They're going to kill us tomorrow. I know it. Hidden evidence with Swiss account Walter knows about. If something happens, everything's here. Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a list of names, American officials, some she recognized from history books, senators, generals, future cabinet members, all connected to Operation Prometheus. "This is why they're still scared," she said. "Some of these families are still in power." Muller cleared his throat. "There's something else. Your grandfather left instructions. If the box was ever opened, I was to give you this." Another envelope, sealed differently. Inside, a single key and an address in Belgium. "That's 10 kilometers from where the planes were found," Ilse said, studying it. "What's there?" "According to our records, your grandfather purchased a small plot of land there in September 1944. Through intermediaries, of course. It's been maintained by a local trust." Muller pulled up modern satellite images. "It appears to be just forest now. Emma pocketed everything. We need to go there." "It's a trap," Ilse warned. "Maybe. But my grandfather hid something else, something he couldn't put in a bank." They left through the bank's garage, Muller's security helping them evade the watchers. But Emma knew they were just buying time. Whoever was behind this had resources, reach, patience. "There's something I haven't told you," Ilse said as they drove toward Belgium. "The compound, Sector 7, it didn't close after your grandfather died. It expanded, operated until 1947. Then everyone involved disappeared. New names, new lives, scattered across America." "How do you know?" "Because I hunted them. For 20 years I tracked every doctor, every administrator. Most died naturally, but some." She smiled coldly. "Some had accidents, car crashes, falls, heart attacks at unusually young ages." Emma looked at this 93-year-old woman with new eyes. "You killed them?" "I executed war criminals who were living free in suburbia." "Your grandfather would have done the same if he'd lived." She paused. "There's one left. The last one who was there when they murdered the pilots." "Morrison's dead." "Morrison was middle management. I'm talking about the doctor who ran the experiments. Dr. Theodore Blackwood. He's 97, living in a veteran's home in Virginia under another name. Still protected by the CIA." Emma's phone buzzed with a text from the block number. "Doctor. Blackwood sends his regards. He's eager to meet Danny Garrett's granddaughter." They knew where she was going. They were letting her come. "It's still a trap," Ilse said. "I know." Emma checked the pistol Ilse had given her. "But some traps are worth walking into." The Belgian countryside rolled past, peaceful and green, hiding decades of secrets beneath its soil. Somewhere ahead was whatever Danny Garrett had thought important enough to buy land for, to hide so carefully that even his killers hadn't found it. And somewhere behind them, the last architect of Operation Prometheus was waiting. The sun was setting as they approached the coordinates, painting the sky the color of old blood. Emma thought about 3 young pilots seeing this same sunset, knowing they wouldn't see another. She was going to finish what her grandfather started, even if it killed her. October 9th, 2019. Belgian forest. Night. The land Danny Garrett had purchased was nothing special, 5 acres of dense forest, untouched since the war. Emma and Ilse left the car on a dirt road and walked in using Emma's phone flashlight until Ilse grabbed her wrist. No lights. If they're watching, we go dark. They moved through trees by moonlight, following GPS coordinates to the center of Danny's plot. There, almost invisible under 75 years of growth, was a concrete cap, like a well cover, but larger. A bunker, Ilse whispered. Small one. Probably Wehrmacht originally. Emma found the edges, cleared away decades of leaves and dirt. There was a hatch locked with a mechanism that matched the second key from the bank. It opened with a grinding protest of old metal. The smell hit them first. Stale air, rust, something chemical. Emma dropped in, landing on concrete. The beam of her flashlight revealed a single room, maybe 10 by 10 feet. And along one wall, filing cabinets. American military issue, 1944. He had help, Ilse said, climbing down. Your grandfather couldn't have done this alone. Emma opened the first cabinet. Files, hundreds of them. Medical records from the compound. Not copies. Originals somehow smuggled out. Each one detailed experiments performed on prisoners who'd been told they were receiving treatment, hypothermia studies, disease resistance, surgical experiments that made Emma's stomach turn. Look at this, Ilse held up a folder marked with red stamps. Subject 247, a child, maybe 8 years old. She stopped reading, her face pale even in the flashlight beam. The second cabinet held photographs Danny hadn't been able to microfilm. These were worse than what was in the bank, clear evidence of American doctors working alongside Nazi researchers, Morrison observing, taking notes. But the third cabinet was different. Personnel files, but not from 1944. Some were dated as late as 1960. These are CIA files, Emma breathed. How did my grandfather? He didn't. A new voice from above. Male, elderly, but strong. I did. Emma raised Ilse's pistol as a figure descended into the bunker, an old man in an expensive coat, moving carefully but steadily. When he reached the bottom and turned, Emma saw a face from the photographs, older, weathered, but unmistakable. Dr. Blackwood, she said. Actually, it's Doctor. Martin Shepard now, has been since 1947. He held his hands up, showing he was unarmed. I've been waiting for someone to find this place for 75 years. You killed my grandfather. Morrison killed your grandfather. I was just a young doctor, horrified by what I was seeing, but too terrified to speak up. He moved slowly to the filing cabinets, until I met someone brave enough to do what I couldn't. October 15th, 1944. 1 p.m., 2 hours before the patrol. Theodore Blackwood, he hadn't become Martin Shepard yet, watched through the window as 3 P-51s prepared for takeoff. Morrison had just briefed him. The pilots had been asking questions. They would investigate Sector 7. They would have to be silenced. I can't be part of this, he told Morrison. You already are, Doctor. Every experiment you've observed, every note you've taken, makes you complicit. Besides, Morrison had smiled coldly. Your family thinks you're a hero, serving your country. Would hate for them to learn you're helping Nazi doctors continue their work. But Blackwood had already made his choice. The night before, he'd met secretly with someone from the resistance, a teenage girl named Ilse who'd been smuggling information out of the compound. He'd given her everything he could copy, told her about the planned murder of the pilots. I can't stop it, he'd said, but I can document it. Make sure evidence survives. Now, watching the plane's taxi, he felt the weight of his cowardice. 3 men about to die, and he was going to let it happen to preserve evidence. October 9th, 2019, Belgian bunker, continued. You? Emma stared at him. You were the intelligence contact Danny mentioned? I fed him information for weeks, helped him set up the Swiss account, even arranged for this bunker, claimed it was for storing medical supplies. Blackwood's voice was heavy with decades of guilt. I thought if I preserved enough evidence, someday justice would come. Instead, you kept working for them, Ilse spat. I tracked you. CIA, MK Ultra. Decades of experiments. Because they had my family. The old man's composure cracked. Morrison made sure of that. My wife, my children. There was always an implied threat. So yes, I kept working, but I also kept copying files, adding them here, building a case that would destroy everyone involved. He pulled out a modern USB drive. Everything's digitized now. Names, dates, financial records showing the program never really ended. It just got better at hiding. Emma kept the gun on him. Why should I trust you? Because I'm 97 years old and I've been dying for 3 years. Slow cancer, eating me from inside. Poetic justice, really? He coughed, specks of blood on his handkerchief. I've outlived almost everyone from Prometheus. Morrison, the other doctors, the administrators. But their children are still in power. Senators, CIA, directors, federal judges. All protected by the secret their fathers killed to keep. So expose it, Emma said. I tried. Twice. The journalists I approached died in accidents. The files I sent to the FBI disappeared. He sat heavily on a crate. They're too powerful, too connected. Unless what? Unless the exposure comes from someone they can't silence, someone with an unimpeachable claim to the truth. He looked at Emma, the granddaughter of a murdered war hero with evidence her grandfather died collecting. Emma's phone buzzed. She turned it back on to navigate, and now messages flooded in. Photos of her apartment, ransacked, her office at the university, searched, her sister's house, under surveillance. They're threatening my family. They always do, Blackwood said. It's how they've kept this quiet for 7 decades. Ilsa had been silent, studying files. Now she looked up. There's something else here. Financial records. The experiments. They were funded by American corporations, pharmaceutical companies that are still major government contractors. Follow the money, Blackwood nodded. Always follow the money. Those companies made billions from research that started in concentration camps. Some of their best-selling drugs came from data collected through torture. Above them, car engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. They found us, Ilsa said. Blackwood smiled sadly. I told them. Had to? They have my granddaughter. 13 years old, same age I was when this started. He pulled out a phone, showing a video. A young girl terrified in what looked like a warehouse. You son of a bitch, Emma raised the gun. Shoot me if you want. I deserve it. But listen first. They think I'm delivering you and the evidence. But I'm not that brave or that stupid. He pressed something on his phone. I just uploaded everything to 50 different news outlets, WikiLeaks, and a dozen foreign intelligence services. It's done. In 1 hour, the whole world will know about Operation Prometheus. Car doors slamming above, boots on ground. They'll kill us all, Ilsa said. No, too public now. They'll arrest us, claim we're foreign agents, terrorism, something. But the evidence is already out there. He looked at Emma. Your grandfather would be proud. He started this. You finished it. Men in tactical gear dropped into the bunker, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Emma set down her pistol, hands up. As they zip-tied her wrists, she saw one of them, young, professional, just following orders. Like Morrison had been, like Blackwood had been, like her grandfather had been, until he'd found something worth dying to expose. They dragged them up into the night, black SUVs, no plates, but also, in the distance, regular Belgian police cars, and news vans, somehow already there. Dr. Blackwood, a reporter shouted. Is it true about the American experiments? The tactical team tried to hustle them into vehicles, but more reporters appeared. Cameras, microphones, lights. Someone had tipped off the media, probably Blackwood's final play. My grandfather was murdered, Emma shouted before they could push her into an SUV. Lieutenant Daniel Garrett killed by his own country for discovering Operation Prometheus. The cameras swung to her. The tactical team hesitated. They couldn't just disappear her on live television. In that moment of confusion, sirens, Belgian federal police surrounding the black SUVs, a standoff in the forest where 3 pilots had been murdered 75 years ago. Emma's phone, somehow still in her pocket, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the news. Someone held up a tablet, breaking news on every channel, leaked documents about Operation Prometheus. American experiments on Holocaust survivors, the cover-up, the murders. Danny Garrett's photo, young and handsome in his pilot's uniform, was on CNN. The tactical team leader spoke into his radio, then slowly lowered his weapon. "We're withdrawing," he announced. They left, disappearing into the night as quickly as they'd come. The Belgian police took Emma, Ilse, and Blackwood into protective custody instead. "It's over," Blackwood said in the police car. 75 years of secrets, finally in the light. But Emma knew better. It wasn't over, it was just beginning. The evidence was out, but justice, real justice, that would take longer. There would be investigations, trials, denials. Some people would pay. Others would escape. But 3 pilots who died for the truth would finally be acknowledged as heroes, not casualties. That was a start. October 10, 2019. Belgian Federal Police Station, Ypres. Emma hadn't slept. She sat in the small interview room, watching sunrise paint the walls while Ilse dozed in her chair. Blackwood was in medical custody, his cancer more advanced than he'd let on, requiring immediate treatment. The door opened. A woman entered, 50s, sharp suit, American accent. "Miss Garrett, I'm Deputy Director Sarah Coleman, CIA. We need to talk about what you've done." "What I've done?" Emma's voice was raw. "My grandfather was murdered." "Your grandfather was investigating classified operations during wartime. The situation was complex." "Complex?" Emma laughed, brittle and sharp. "That's what you call murdering 3 pilots?" Coleman sat down, placing a tablet on the table. "The documents, Doctor." Blackwood released are causing an international incident. 3 allied governments are demanding explanations. Stock markets are crashing. Pharmaceutical companies that employ millions are facing bankruptcy. Good. Is it? Those companies make insulin, cancer drugs, antibiotics that save lives. Coleman pulled up headlines. Patients are already panicking, refusing medications because they're afraid they were developed through torture. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. She hadn't thought about that. "Your grandfather stumbled into something that was already in motion," Coleman continued. "Ugly, yes, wrong, absolutely, but stopping it in 1944 wouldn't have saved those prisoners. They were dying anyway. The research, horrible as it was, led to medical breakthroughs that have saved millions." "You're justifying it." "I'm explaining why 3 idealistic pilots had to die to protect a greater good." Coleman's voice softened. "Your grandfather was a hero, Miss Garrett, but heroes don't always get to live." October 15th, 1944. 3 p.m. The barn near Sector 7. Danny came to with blood in his eyes and Morrison standing over him. The barn smelled like hay and motor oil. Frankie was unconscious, slumped against a post. Bobby was awake, trying not to cry, his left arm bent wrong from the landing. "You couldn't just follow orders," Morrison said. He looked tired, older than his 40 years. "Simple patrol. That's all you had to do." "Those are prisoners," Danny spat blood. "Americans experimenting on Holocaust survivors." "Dying survivors. People who wouldn't last another week. Their deaths are giving us data that will save American lives." "That's what the Nazis said." Morrison hit him again, splitting his lip. "We are nothing like them. We're using their research to ensure it wasn't all for nothing. Those people suffered anyway. At least now, their suffering has meaning." "You're insane." "I'm practical." "Do you know what the Soviets are doing? They grabbed every researcher they could find. If we don't keep pace, the next war will be fought with weapons we don't understand, diseases we can't cure." Morrison pulled out his sidearm. "I don't enjoy this." "You're good men, but you destroy something essential to America's survival." "We have photographs," Danny said. "Hidden. If we disappear, they'll surface." Morrison smiled sadly. "No, they won't. We found your camera, the film you hid in your boot. Your friend at the Swiss bank has been dealt with. There's nothing left, but Danny had one card left. Peterson knows. My crew chief told him everything this morning. Morrison's face changed. You're lying. Check. Morrison stepped outside, spoke to someone. Danny could hear rapid radio chatter. Then Morrison returned, his face darker. Peterson's in custody. But you did tell him. He raised his pistol. This could have been clean. Now it's going to be messy. Wait, Frankie spoke up, finally conscious. You need us alive. 3 missing pilots is one thing. 3 dead pilots with bullet wounds, that's harder to explain. Not if you're never found. Our planes, Bobby said through tears. People saw them land. Ilsa, the resistance girl, she photographed them. Morrison hesitated. Danny could see him calculating. Bury us with the planes, Danny said suddenly. Make it look like we crashed and locals buried us. Hidden grave discovered years later. No bullet wounds will show on skeletons. Danny, what are you? Frankie started. It's the only way our families get closure, Danny said, looking at Morrison. Otherwise, we're just missing forever. My daughter grows up not knowing. Bobby's girl waits her whole life. Give them bodies to bury, Morrison. You're not a monster. Morrison lowered his gun slightly. You'd cooperate? Make this clean? What choice do we have? Danny's voice was hollow. You're going to kill us either way. October 10th, 2019. Belgian Federal Police Station continued. He made a deal, Emma said, understanding flooding through her. My grandfather negotiated his own murder. Coleman nodded. Morrison's private notes, recovered from his estate. Your grandfather convinced him that 3 bodies found years later in their planes would raise fewer questions than 3 pilots vanishing completely. Emma felt sick. And Morrison agreed? With conditions. The pilots would write final letters home dated before the flight. They'd help position the planes for burial. In exchange, Morrison promised the bodies would eventually be found and returned home. But they weren't found for 65 years. Morrison died in 1978. His successors saw no benefit in revealing the graves. Coleman pulled up another file. This is your grandfather's last letter. Never sent, found in Morrison's files. Emma read her grandfather's handwriting. My darling Margaret, if you're reading this, I've gone down fighting. Know that I love you and our unborn child more than life itself. Tell her, I'm certain it's a girl, that her father died trying to do right. I've discovered something terrible. Our own people doing unforgivable things. I tried to stop it, but some sins are too big for one man to fight. They're going to kill me for what I know. Frankie and Bobby, too. We're going to die together at least. Don't mourn too long. Remarry. Be happy. Let our daughter grow up believing her father was a hero who died in combat. It's cleaner than the truth. Forever yours, Danny. Emma was crying now, couldn't stop. He knew. He knew exactly what was going to happen. They all did, Coleman said softly. The 3 of them spent their last hour planning how to hide evidence, writing letters, making peace. Your grandfather used his own blood to write that note you found. They made us disappear. Hid it inside his jacket where he knew it would survive. Ilsa woke, saw Emma crying. What's happening? Coleman stood. We're prepared to make a deal. The evidence is out, can't be stopped. But we can control the narrative. Your grandfather and his friends die as heroes who discovered a rogue operation. Morrison becomes the sole villain. The institutions survive. And if I refuse? Then we reveal the full truth. That your grandfather was planning to desert. That he'd been selling information to Soviet contacts. That his death was justified execution of a traitor. That's a lie. Truth is what we document it to be. Coleman headed for the door. You have 1 hour to decide, hero or traitor. Your grandfather's legacy is in your hands. After she left, Emma sat in crushing silence. Ilsa took her hand. They have no power now, the old woman said. The evidence Blackwood released proves the experiments happened, not who was responsible. They can spin it any way they want. Emma thought about her father, growing up believing his father died a hero. Her sister's children, proud of their war hero great-grandfather. Her phone buzzed, a text from Karen, her sister. "Emma, the news is saying horrible things about Grandpa Danny. Please tell me it's not true." Emma looked at the photo of 3 young men, arms around each other, hours before they died. They'd known what was coming, chosen how to face it, made peace with death to protect something bigger than themselves. "They were barely older than boys," Ilse said quietly. "Your grandfather was 24, Frankie was 25, Bobby was 19. Just children, really. Old enough to die for their country, old enough to be murdered for the truth." The door opened again. Not Coleman, a younger agent with a laptop. "Miss Garrett? There's something you need to see. Live feed from Arlington National Cemetery. On the screen, hundreds of people gathering at Morrison's grave. Veterans, families, regular citizens. Someone had spray-painted murderer across his headstone. Signs read, 'Justice for the Forgotten Three,' and 'Danny Garrett was a hero.' It's happening at war memorials across the country," the agent said. "Your grandfather's story has gone viral. People are demanding full disclosure." Emma felt something shift. The narrative was already escaping CIA control. The truth, messy and painful as it was winning. "I want to see Blackwood," she said, "before I decide anything." The agent looked uncertain, but made a call. 20 minutes later, they were in a hospital room where Blackwood lay dying, machines keeping him barely alive. "Emma," he whispered, "I'm sorry. For all of it. Tell me how they actually died. The truth." Blackwood closed his eyes. Morrison gave them a choice. Execution in the barn, bodies burned, families never knowing. Or cooperation. Help stage their own deaths, write letters home, die with dignity. And they chose? Your grandfather chose for all of them. Said they'd do it Morrison's way, but on one condition. They wanted to be buried together, in their planes, positioned so they were protecting each other. Morrison agreed. Emma could barely breathe. How? Lethal injection, morphine overdose. They sat in their cockpits, held hands through the open canopies, and Blackwood started crying, this ancient dying man. Your grandfather's last words were, "Tell our families we weren't afraid." Were they? Afraid? Terrified. But they sang as the drugs took effect. Their squadron song, something about flying home. Emma broke, sobbed for 3 boys who died singing, holding hands, trying to be brave. Ilse held her as she cried. When she could speak again, Emma made her decision. "I'll take Coleman's deal. But with conditions. Full military honors for all 3 pilots, their names on the Wall of Honor, and the truth, the real truth, sealed for 50 years. Let their great-grandchildren decide what to do with it." Blackwood managed to smile. "Your grandfather would be proud. He understood sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war." That night, Emma stood where the 3 planes had been found. The Belgian government had already announced plans for a memorial. 3 young men who died together rather than betray their principles, even when those principles killed them. Her phone rang. "Coleman, we accept your terms. The ceremony is next month. All 3 families will be there." Emma hung up and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, maybe 3 pilots were finally flying home. October 15th, 2019. Brussels. Emma met Bobby Whelan's granddaughter at a small cafe near the European Parliament. Sarah Whelan Morrison, she'd kept both names, was 68, a retired teacher with her grandfather's eyes and careful way of holding herself. "He never married my grandmother," Sarah said, stirring her coffee. She waited 3 years, then finally accepted she'd been waiting for a ghost. Emma pushed the folder across the table, documents Blackwood had released, photos from the crash site, Bobby's last letter home that Morrison never sent. Sarah read in silence, then looked up with tears streaming down her face. 19 years old. My God, he was just 19. He was brave. They all were. Were they? Sarah's voice turned bitter. Or were they just three boys who trusted the wrong people and died for it? Emma didn't have an answer for that. October 15th, 1944. 3:45 p.m. The final moments. They'd moved the planes into position first, that terrible triangle formation that would puzzle investigators decades later. Morrison's men helped, everyone understanding this was theater now, staging a mystery that might never be solved. Bobby threw up twice from fear. Frankie held him, told him stories about home, about the garage they'd opened together after the war. Danny wrote in his journal with his own blood from a deliberately reopened cut, hands shaking but determined. "We need to make this look right," Morrison said, almost gentle now. "Like you crashed and were buried, your positions matter." "We know," Danny said. He'd already thought it through. "We'll be in our cockpits, strapped in, looking at each other. Anyone who finds us will know we died together." Dr. Blackwood prepared the injections, hands trembling. "It won't hurt," he promised, "just like going to sleep." "Doc," Frankie said, "when they find us, however many years from now, make sure they know we weren't cowards. We didn't run." "I will." They climbed into their cockpits one last time. Danny in the lead position, Frankie on his right, Bobby on his left. The canopies stayed open so they could see each other. "Remember that night in London?" Frankie called out. "When Bobby got so drunk he tried to fight the British pilot?" "He was insulting American beer," Bobby protested, and they laughed. Actually laughed, sitting in their death traps. Danny pulled out Margaret's photo, kissed it, tucked it into the instrument panel where it would be found. "Tell our families we loved them," he said to Blackwood. The doctor moved between the planes with his syringe. Bobby first, the kid was shaking too hard to wait. Then Frankie, who squeezed Danny's hand one last time. "See you on the other side, brother." Finally, Danny. As the needle went in, he looked at Morrison. "This won't stay secret. Someday someone will dig us up and ask why, and when they do, the truth will bury you." Morrison said nothing. The morphine was warm, spreading through Danny's veins like summer honey. He could hear Bobby singing, scared but trying, their squadron song about silver wings and golden mornings. Frankie joined in, his baritone steady. Danny added his voice, looking at his brothers as the world began to fade. "Silver wings in morning light, carry me home through endless night. When my flying days are done, I'll chase no more the morning sun." The last thing Danny saw was Bobby reaching out his hand, and Frankie taking it and then reaching for Danny's, and they held on as the darkness came, three boys refusing to let go of each other, even in death. October 15th, 2019. Brussels. Continued. "They held hands?" Sarah asked, voice breaking. According to Blackwood. When Morrison's men positioned them for burial, they had to break their fingers to separate them. Sarah stood abruptly, walked to the window. "My grandmother used to say Bobby had the most beautiful hands, artist's hands, she called them. He was going to be an architect after the war." Sarah? 19 years old. She turned back, angry now. 19, and they executed him for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. For refusing to stay quiet about war crimes. Same difference. Sarah sat back down, pulled out her own folder. "I've been doing research since the news broke. Do you know what happened to the compound after October 15th? Emma shook her head. "It operated for 3 more years. Hundreds of test subjects. The data they collected became the foundation for CIA's MK Ultra program. Every conspiracy theorist who said the government was conducting mind control experiments? They were right. The families of the other test subjects, most don't know. The few who do were paid off or threatened into silence." Sarah pulled out a list. "But I've been contacting them." Quietly. "We're organizing." "To do what?" "To demand real justice, not just ceremonies and apologies. Criminal prosecution for anyone still alive who was involved. Reparations for the families, full disclosure of all related programs." Emma's phone buzzed. Coleman texting, "The memorial ceremony is confirmed for November 11th. Veterans Day. The President will attend." "They want to make this about patriotism," Emma said, showing Sarah the text. "3 heroes who died for their country. Instead of 3 boys murdered by their country." Sarah pulled out another document. "This is a lawsuit. Wrongful death, conspiracy, violation of international law. 17 families have already signed on. It'll take years, decades maybe. My grandfather waited 75 years to come home. I can wait as long as it takes for justice." That evening, Emma visited the field where the planes had been found. The Belgian government had already erected a temporary memorial, 3 white crosses with their names, flowers from locals who remembered the day the Americans didn't come to liberate them because they'd been buried a few miles away. An old man was standing there, mid-90s at least, leaning on a cane. "I helped bury them," he said in accented English when he saw Emma. "I was 20. Morrison's men made us help, my father and uncle and me. Told us it was classified, that we'd be shot if we ever spoke of it." "Why tell me now?" "Because I'm 95, and what can they do to me?" He pointed with his cane. "Your grandfather there, in the middle." Even dead, he looked angry, like he wasn't finished fighting. He wasn't. The young one, Bobby, he looked peaceful, like a child sleeping. We had to arrange him 3 times because Morrison said it didn't look natural enough. The old man spat. Natural. 3 boys in their planes, underground. Did Morrison say anything? When it was done? He said they were traitors who'd endangered the war effort, but his men, the ones who'd done the burying, they didn't believe him. You could see it. They knew they'd just hidden a crime. As the sun set, Emma stood among the crosses and called Coleman. "The lawsuit Sarah Whelan is filing, you know about it?" "We're aware. I want in. I want every document, every file, every piece of evidence about October 15th, 1944. That wasn't our deal. Our deal was for the ceremony. This is separate. You want to control the narrative? Give me the truth to work with. Otherwise, I'll let Sarah's lawyers dig it up in court, publicly, messily." Coleman was quiet for a long moment. "I'll see what I can do." After she hung up, Emma touched her grandfather's cross. The wood was rough, temporary, but someone had carved into it. "They made us disappear, but we didn't go quietly." She thought about Danny's final moments, holding his brother's hands, singing about flying home. 24 years old, knowing he was about to die, and his last act was to comfort Bobby, to stay connected to Frankie. That was the real crime, she realized. Not just murdering 3 pilots, but forcing them to participate in their own disappearance, making them complicit in their own erasure. But they'd fought back the only way they could, with evidence hidden in boots and blood, with positioned planes that would raise questions, with held hands that said, "We were here, we were together, we mattered." Tomorrow she would fly home and start fighting the legal battle. But tonight she sat in a Belgian field and sang softly the squadron song Blackwood had remembered. "Silver wings in morning light, carry me home through endless night. When my flying days are done, I'll chase no more the morning sun, but rest with brothers, duty done until the morning comes again, and silver wings fly home." Somewhere in the darkness she could almost hear 3 young voices joining in. November 10th, 2019. Indianapolis. Emma stood in her father's empty house, sorting through what remained. The estate sale had taken most everything, but she'd kept the trunk, Danny's journal, the photographs. Tomorrow was the memorial at Arlington. Tonight she couldn't sleep. Her phone rang. Frankie Holbrook's grandson, David, calling from Seattle. "Emma? I just got off the phone with the Pentagon. They're offering my family $2 million to sign an NDA about Grandpa Frankie's death." "What?" "Complete silence about Operation Prometheus, the murder, everything, in exchange for what they're calling restoration of benefits and compensation for administrative errors." His voice was bitter. "They're trying to buy us." Emma sank into her father's old chair. "Are you going to take it?" "My mother wants to." "She's 73, has medical bills. $2 million would change everything for her." He paused. But Grandpa Frankie didn't die for money. He died for truth. The lawsuit Sarah's filing could take 20 years and get us nothing. Or $2 million now, and we pretend he died a hero in combat? David's voice cracked. What would you do? Emma thought about Danny's journal, his careful handwriting documenting things he knew would kill him. I don't know. I really don't. After David hung up, Emma opened her laptop. 17 families had joined the lawsuit, but she could see the cracks forming. The government had unlimited resources, unlimited time. They could wait out elderly widows and children with medical bills. Her phone buzzed. A text from Coleman. Final offer, $3 million to each family. Full military honors. Heroic narrative preserved. Or we go to trial and reveal everything, including things you don't know yet. Things she didn't know yet. October 15th, 1944. 4 p.m. after the injections. Morrison stood over the 3 bodies, checking pulses. Danny was still breathing, barely, fighting the morphine with sheer will. His eyes were open, unfocused, but aware. He's still conscious, Blackwood said, alarmed. Not for long. Morrison leaned down close to Danny's face. You want to know the truth, Garrett? The real truth? This program started before the war. Americans and Germans, working together on eugenics research. We didn't capture these doctors. We invited them. The war just interrupted our collaboration. Danny's lips moved. No sound. Your president knows. Roosevelt himself signed off on bringing them over. This goes all the way to the top, Garrett. You never had a chance. Danny's hand twitched, fingers scraping against something in his pocket. Morrison didn't notice. He was already turning away, giving orders about the burial. But Blackwood saw Danny pull something out with his last conscious movement. A small metal capsule, the kind intelligence used for microfilm. Danny's eyes met his for 1 second, please, before they finally closed. When Morrison's men carried Danny to his plane, Blackwood slipped the capsule from Danny's dead fingers. Later, much later, he would hide it in the Swiss bank. Evidence that even Morrison didn't know Danny had carried. November 10th, 2019. Continued. Emma's doorbell rang at midnight. She opened it to find an elderly woman, elegant despite her age, with Sarah Whelan standing beside her. Miss Garrett? I'm Elizabeth Holbrook, Frankie's widow. Emma's mouth fell open. But the record said Frankie wasn't married. We married in secret, October 13th, 1944, 2 days before he died. Elizabeth's smile was sad. He knew something was going to happen. Said he wanted me to have widow's benefits if he didn't come back. She handed Emma a photograph, Frankie and Elizabeth, at what looked like a hurried ceremony, Danny and Bobby as witnesses, all of them trying to smile. They all knew, Elizabeth said, that last week they all knew they were marked. Danny made Frankie marry me, said at least one of them should leave a legal widow behind. Why didn't you come forward before? Morrison visited me. November 1944. Said if I ever revealed the marriage, they'd charge Frankie posthumously with treason. Said I'd lose everything, be imprisoned as an accomplice. She touched the photo gently. I was 22 and pregnant. I kept quiet. Sarah took Elizabeth's arm. She's been hiding for 75 years, but now I'm 97, and I want the truth told before I die. Elizabeth pulled out a thick envelope. Frankie's real letters, not the ones Morrison fabricated, but the ones he actually wrote that last week. Emma read them, tears blurring her vision. Frankie had documented everything, the removed gun cameras, the changed flight path, his certainty they were being set up, but also his love for Elizabeth, his hope for their unborn child, his determination to face whatever came with dignity. If they kill us, Lisbeth, know that we didn't go quietly. Danny's got evidence hidden. Bobby's writing everything down. We're 3 stupid boys trying to fight something bigger than nations, but sometimes that's what heroes really are, just people too stupid to know they can't win. There's something else, Elizabeth said. She pulled out a small key. Frankie gave me this that last morning, said if something happened, wait 50 years, then use it. I waited 75. The key had a number, 1527, and a location, Chicago First National Bank. "Whatever's in that box," Elizabeth said, "Frankie died to protect it." November 11, 2019, Arlington National Cemetery. The ceremony was everything the government could orchestrate: flags, an honor guard, a 21-gun salute for 3 heroes finally coming home. The president spoke about duty and sacrifice. The Air Force Chief of Staff called them exemplars of American courage. Emma stood with the families, wearing her grandfather's wings on her lapel. Sarah Whelan held her grandmother's hand, the woman who'd waited 3 years for Bobby before giving up. David Holbrook supported his grandmother Elizabeth, who stood straight despite her age. When it was Emma's turn to speak, she stepped to the podium and looked out at the crowd: reporters, military brass, 3 coffins draped in flags that held only partial remains recovered from Belgian soil. She'd prepared a speech about heroism and sacrifice. Instead, she said, "My grandfather was 24 years old when he was murdered by his own country for refusing to stay silent about war crimes. He wasn't a hero. He was a young man who loved his pregnant wife and wanted to come home, but when he found something evil, he couldn't look away." Gasps from the crowd. Coleman started moving forward, but Emma continued. "Frankie Holbrook was 25. He married his girlfriend 2 days before he died because he knew he was going to be killed. Bobby Whelan was 19. He threw up from fear before they executed him, but he still held his friends' hands as they died." The president's aides were frantically signaling to cut the microphone, but the sound tech, a young veteran, kept it on. "They want you to believe these men died as patriots. They did. But patriotism isn't blind obedience. Sometimes it's standing up to your own country when it's wrong. Sometimes it's dying to expose the truth." She pulled out the capsule Blackwood had hidden for 75 years, the one Danny had carried on his last flight. "This contains evidence that the American government was collaborating with Nazi doctors before the war. That Operation Prometheus wasn't a rogue program, but official policy. That my grandfather and his friends were murdered not for finding a secret, but for threatening to expose a partnership between American and German eugenicists that started in the 1930s. Security was moving in now, but Emma spoke faster. "They died singing. 3 boys holding hands in their cockpits, singing their squadron song as lethal injections stopped their hearts. That's not heroism. That's tragedy. That's what happens when countries value secrets more than souls." They cut her mic, but she shouted the last words. "Danny Garrett, Frankie Holbrook, Bobby Whelan. They didn't die for America. They were killed by America, and they deserve justice, not just ceremony." Security pulled her from the podium. But the damage was done. Every camera had caught it. Every phone had recorded it. Within minutes, it was viral. As they escorted her out, she passed the 3 coffins. She stopped, despite security pulling at her, and placed her hand on Danny's flag-draped casket. "I told them, Grandpa." The whole world knows now. That evening, in federal custody waiting to be charged with disrupting a military funeral, Emma got a call. Elizabeth Holbrook's lawyer. "We opened Frankie's safety deposit box. You need to see what was inside." What was it? Film reels. Clear footage of Morrison and American officials meeting with German doctors in 1938. Pre-war collaboration on human experimentation. Your grandfather was right. This didn't start in 1944. It started before anyone was at war. Emma closed her eyes. 3 boys had died to expose something that went deeper than anyone imagined. And 75 years later, the fight for truth was just beginning. But at least now, finally, Danny and Frankie and Bobby weren't disappeared anymore. They were remembered. They were named. They were home. November 15th, 2019. Federal Detention Center, Washington, D.C. Emma had been in custody for 4 days. The charges kept changing, disrupting a federal ceremony, releasing classified information, inciting public disorder. Her lawyer, provided by Sarah Whelan's group, told her they were stalling. "They don't know what to do with you," he said. "Prosecuting Danny Garrett's granddaughter right now would be public relations suicide." The door opened. Coleman entered, looking exhausted. "The President wants this to go away," she said without preamble. "You've turned 3 dead pilots into martyrs and made the entire intelligence community look like murderers." "You are murderers." Coleman sat down heavily. "We're pragmatists." "There's a difference." "Tell that to my grandfather?" "Your grandfather would understand if he'd lived to see the Cold War, the bioweapons the Soviets developed, the chemical agents that came out of their research programs." Coleman pulled out a tablet showing classified documents. 1962. Soviet agents released a modified strain of tuberculosis in Afghanistan. Killed 3,000 people in 2 weeks. The only reason it didn't spread globally was because we had antidotes developed from Prometheus research. Emma stared at the documents. "You're saying the experiments saved lives?" "I'm saying the world is messier than good versus evil. Your grandfather saw things in black and white. That clarity killed him." "Morrison killed him." "Morrison was following orders from people who were weighing 3 pilots against potential millions." Coleman leaned forward. "I'm going to tell you something classified. The real reason they had to die. October 14th, 1944. Night. The Eagle's Nest Pub. Danny was drunk, but not enough to blur what he'd found. He sat with Frankie and Bobby in the corner booth, voices low. "I broke into Morrison's office," he said. Frankie sobered instantly. "You did what?" "Had to know why we're being sent to Sector 7. Danny pulled out stolen documents. "Look at this. Prisoner transfer records from 1938. American officials visiting Dachau before the war. Learning techniques." Bobby went pale. "We were working with them before?" "Not just working. Funding. American eugenics programs inspired the Nazi race laws. We taught them, then we acted shocked when they took it further than we did." "Jesus," Frankie breathed. "There's more?" Danny showed them another document. "After the war, they planned to bring hundreds of these researchers to America. New identities, new lives, working for us. That's insane. That's Operation Paperclip. It's already approved, signed by Roosevelt himself." Bobby was shaking. "We have to tell someone." "Who?" "This goes to the top. The very top." Danny looked at his friends, these boys he'd flown with for 2 years. "Tomorrow's patrol isn't random. Morrison knows I took these documents. We're being sent to Sector 7 to disappear." "Then we don't go," Frankie said immediately. "And be shot for desertion? Our families disgraced?" Danny shook his head. "We go. But we go ready. I've set up contingencies, hidden evidence. If we die, the truth comes out eventually." "Danny," Bobby's voice was small, "I'm scared." "Me too, kid, but sometimes being scared and doing it anyway is what courage actually is." November 15th, 2019. Continued. "He stole classified documents," Coleman said. "That alone was treason, but worse, he was planning to release them to Soviet contacts." "That's a lie." "Is it?" Coleman produced a photograph. October 14th, 1944. Your grandfather meeting with a known Soviet agent in London. Emma stared at the grainy image. It was Danny clearly talking to a woman in a bar. Her name was Katya Volkov. NKVD. She'd been trying to turn American pilots for months. Coleman leaned back. "Your grandfather didn't just stumble onto Prometheus. He was actively committing espionage. You're fabricating this." "The photo is real. The woman was real. Whether your grandfather was actually going to give her information or was just gathering intelligence himself, we'll never know. Because Morrison made a judgment call." Emma felt everything she'd believed cracking. He was trying to expose war crimes. He was a confused young man who thought he could change the world by betraying his country. Coleman's voice softened slightly. "That doesn't diminish his courage or his friend's loyalty. But it complicates the narrative, doesn't it?" A knock on the door. Emma's lawyer entered with Elizabeth Holbrook and David. "We need a moment with my client," the lawyer said. Coleman left. Elizabeth sat across from Emma, her ancient hands steady. "She's lying," the old woman said immediately. "That woman in the photo, Katya Volkov, was a double agent, working for us. Danny was meeting her on Morrison's orders. How do you know? Because Frankie told me. The night before they died, Morrison had sent Danny to feed false information to the Soviets, but Danny figured out she was a double, that Morrison was using him to identify Soviet intelligence networks. David pulled out the film reels from Frankie's safety deposit box. We had them analyzed. There's footage of Morrison meeting with Katya in 1943. She was his asset. Emma's head spun. So Morrison set up my grandfather to look like a traitor? Perfect cover for murder, Elizabeth said. If anyone asked questions, they'd produce that photo, claim Danny was selling secrets. The lawyer spoke up. We've found 17 other pilots who were sent on similar patrols in 1944 and 45. All disappeared. All had been asking questions about restricted sectors. 17 others? Emma stood, pacing. How many people did they kill to keep this quiet? As many as it took, Elizabeth said quietly. But here's what they didn't count on, us. The families who never stopped asking questions, the widows who never remarried, the children who grew up with holes in their hearts. She pulled out a leather journal worn with age. Frankie's real diary, not the one Morrison's people sanitized, but the one I kept hidden for 75 years. Emma read Frankie's final entry, October 14th, 1944. Tomorrow we die. Danny's certain, and I trust his instincts. Morrison's going to kill us for what we know, but we've made our peace with it. Better to die for something than live with the knowledge we stayed silent. Bobby's terrified but trying to be brave. Kid's got more courage than all of us combined. Danny's angry, wants to fight, but knows we can't win. So we're going to do the next best thing. We're going to die in a way that raises questions. 3 planes, same instant failure, impossible without sabotage. Bodies positioned to show we died together. Someone will wonder why. Evidence hidden everywhere, in boots, in banks, in the hearts of those we love. Elizabeth, if you're reading this, know that I loved you more than life itself. But some things are bigger than love. Some truths demand sacrifice. Tell our child their father died free. Emma looked up, tears streaming. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were heroes, Elizabeth said firmly. Not the kind the government wants to celebrate, the kind who stand up to their own side when necessary. Sarah Whelan entered, breathless. Emma, you need to see this. Someone leaked Coleman's entire classified file on Operation Prometheus. Everything, pre-war collaboration, the murders, the cover-ups, all of it. Who? The leak came from inside the CIA, someone with maximum clearance who's apparently had enough. Emma's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Your grandfather saved my father from Dachau before it was liberated. Time to repay the debt. Check the news in 1 hour. 1 hour later, the Attorney General announced a special investigation into Operation Prometheus and related programs. Criminal charges would be considered for anyone still living who participated in the cover-up. Coleman appeared in the doorway. You're free to go. All charges dropped. Just like that? The president doesn't want you anywhere near a courtroom right now. She paused. For what it's worth, I think your grandfather would be proud. You finished what he started. He shouldn't have had to start anything. He should have come home to his wife and daughter. Coleman had no answer for that. That evening, Emma stood with the families at the real memorial, not the government ceremony, but the gathering of people who'd lost fathers and grandfathers to Prometheus. 17 confirmed now, possibly more. Elizabeth Holbrook, at 97, spoke for all of them. They called our men traitors to justify murder. They called them heroes to avoid accountability. But they were neither. They were young men who saw evil and couldn't look away, who paid the ultimate price for having consciences. She looked directly at the news cameras. We're not asking for apologies or money or ceremonies. We're asking for justice, criminal prosecution for those who ordered murders, full disclosure of all related programs, and recognition that sometimes the greatest act of patriotism is refusing to stay silent when your country is wrong. As candles were lit for each lost pilot, Emma thought about Danny's final moments, holding his brother's hands, singing about flying home, knowing he was about to die, but choosing how to face it. 24 years old, her age now. She couldn't imagine that kind of courage, but she could honor it by continuing to fight for the truth, no matter how complicated or painful it was. The candles flickered in the darkness, 17 lights for 17 murdered boys, and somewhere in the night Emma could almost hear them singing. December 7, 2019. Pearl Harbor Day, Washington, D.C. Emma stood in the rain outside the Department of Justice, watching as the last living participant in Operation Prometheus was wheeled into custody. Colonel James Morrison's aide-de-camp, now 98-year-old retired General Arthur Fitzgerald, had been arrested that morning on charges of conspiracy to commit murder. "I was following orders," he told reporters. "We all were." The Nuremberg defense. It hadn't worked then, either. Sarah Whelan stood beside Emma, holding an umbrella over them both. One arrest, after all this, one 98-year-old man. It's something. It's nothing. The people who really made decisions are all dead, hidden behind decades of classification and bureaucracy. Sarah's voice was bitter. "My grandfather is still dead. One arrest doesn't change that." Emma knew she was right. The investigation had revealed the scope of Prometheus, hundreds of experiments, thousands of victims, decades of cover-ups. But most of the perpetrators had died peacefully in their beds, honored as patriots. Her phone rang. Elizabeth Holbrook. "Emma, dear, I'm at the hospital." "It's time." December 7, 2019. George Washington University Hospital. Elizabeth lay in the cardiac unit, her ancient heart finally failing. She smiled when Emma entered. "Don't look so sad." 97 is a good run. Emma took her hand, paper-thin skin over delicate bones. "You didn't have to fight so hard these last weeks. You could have rested." "Rest? While they were still lying about Frankie?" Elizabeth squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "I couldn't meet him again knowing I'd let them turn him into propaganda." David sat on the other side of the bed, holding his grandmother's other hand. 3 generations connected by one pilot who died at 25. "I need to tell you something," Elizabeth said. "About October 15th, 1944. Something I've never told anyone." Emma leaned closer. "I was there. In Belgium. I wasn't supposed to be. Frankie thought I was safe in London, but I'd followed him. Knew something was wrong." Her eyes went distant. "I saw them land. Saw Morrison's men take them. I could have intervened, could have tried to stop it. You were one woman against. I was a coward. I hid and watched them drive my husband away to die." Tears slipped down her wrinkled cheeks. 75 years I've lived with that, the moment I chose my life over his." "You were pregnant," David said softly. "You were protecting his child." "That's what I told myself. But the truth, I was terrified. 22 years old and terrified." She looked at Emma. "Your grandfather wasn't afraid at the end." "Frankie wrote that in his last letter. Danny helped them all be brave. But I couldn't even try." She died that evening, holding both their hands, whispering Frankie's name. December 15, 2019. Indianapolis. Emma was packing up her apartment, preparing to move to D.C., where she'd been offered a position with the Special Prosecutor's Office, when someone knocked. An elderly man stood there, probably mid-80s, holding a worn box. "Miss Garrett?" "My name is Thomas Peterson. My father was your grandfather's crew chief." Emma's heart stopped. "Sergeant Peterson?" "He died in 1987, but he left this for Danny's family. Said to wait until the truth came out." He handed her the box. "He never forgave himself for not stopping that last flight." Inside the box, Danny's service pistol, never fired, his flight wings, the ones he should have been wearing when he died, and a letter in Peterson's shaking handwriting. "I knew they were going to kill him. Morrison's men told me to install those fuel cutoffs, said it was for extended range testing. But I knew. And I did it anyway, because I was more afraid of court-martial than murder. Danny figured it out. That last morning, he pulled me aside and said, 'Take care of Margaret and the baby, Pete.' Whatever happens, make sure they're okay. He knew he was going to die, and his concern was for his family. I'm a coward who lived to be old. Danny was a hero who died at 24. That's the real injustice. Not just that they killed him, but that cowards like me survived while brave men like him disappeared. Thomas Peterson wiped his eyes. My father sent money to your grandmother every month for 40 years, anonymously. Called it blood money, payment for his cowardice. Emma held the pistol, its weight familiar from Ilse's weapon. He wasn't a coward. He was a young man in an impossible situation. So were they all. But some chose to die for truth, while others chose to live with lies. He turned to leave, then stopped. That special prosecutor, are you really going to work for them? Someone has to. The families deserve answers. The families deserve their fathers back. Everything else is just noise. After he left, Emma sat with the box of Danny's things, his whole life reduced to a pistol, wings, and the guilt of those who survived him. December 24th, 2019. Christmas Eve. Arlington National Cemetery. Emma stood at Danny's grave, the real one this time, not the empty memorial from before. They'd interred what they could recover from Belgium, fragments of bone and cloth, the remains of 3 boys mixed together because after 75 years in the ground, they couldn't be separated. She'd brought his wings to leave at the headstone, but someone had beaten her to it. Fresh flowers, a bottle of bourbon, and a note. Danny, Frankie, Bobby. We flew home without you. Never stopped feeling like deserters. See you on the other side. The surviving members of the 357th. As she stood there, other people arrived. Sarah Whelan with her children, teaching them about great-uncle Bobby, who'd been barely older than her teenage son. David Holbrook carrying his grandmother Elizabeth's ashes to scatter them there, letting her finally rest with Frankie. Then more families. The 17 confirmed victims of similar disappearances. The children and grandchildren of test subjects from Prometheus. Even some German families, descendants of doctors who'd been coerced into participating. No one had organized it. They'd all just come, drawn by the need to mark this first Christmas where the truth was known. An old woman Emma didn't recognize approached. I was a nurse at Sector 7, she said quietly. 20 years old, thought I was helping refugees. Took me 3 weeks to realize what was really happening. I tried to report it, but Morrison said I'd be charged with treason if I spoke up. What did you do? I stayed silent. Treated those poor people, knowing they were being experimented on. Held their hands while they died from procedures that had no purpose except data collection. She pulled out a worn notebook. I wrote down all their names. The ones who didn't have names, I gave them some. No one should die nameless. She handed Emma the notebook. Hundreds of names, dates, brief descriptions. The forgotten victims of Prometheus. Why give this to me? Because you did what I couldn't. You spoke up. Your grandfather would be proud. As the sun set on Christmas Eve, Emma stood among the graves and thought about courage. Not the Hollywood kind, blazing guns and heroic speeches, but the quiet kind. Danny writing evidence in his own blood. Frankie marrying Elizabeth to protect her. Bobby holding his friend's hands despite his terror. And all the people who'd stayed silent for decades finally finding their voices. The special prosecutor had warned her that the investigation would take years, that most cases would be dropped for lack of evidence, that justice would be incomplete at best. But incomplete justice was better than complete silence. Her phone buzzed. A text from Coleman. Merry Christmas, Miss Garrett. Your grandfather's story has inspired 5 other countries to open their own investigations into wartime medical experiments. You've started something that can't be stopped. Emma didn't reply. Coleman didn't deserve the satisfaction of a response. Instead, she opened Danny's journal to the last entry he'd written, in ink, not blood, October 14th, 1944. Tomorrow I die for something I believe in, not country, not flag, but the simple truth that some things are wrong no matter who does them. I hope someday my daughter understands that her father loved her enough to die for the world he wanted her to live in. One where might doesn't make right, where secrets don't justify murder, where 3 boys can't just disappear because they ask the wrong questions. I'm not brave, I'm terrified. But Frankie says courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite the fear. So tomorrow, I'll be courageous. For Margaret, for our baby, for Bobby and Frankie, for everyone who can't speak up. We're going to die holding hands, looking at each other, refusing to let them make us disappear alone. That's our resistance. Dying together, dying unashamed, dying with our eyes open. If you're reading this, know that 3 boys loved each other and their country enough to die for both. Daniel Garrett, Frankie Holbrook, Bobby Whelan. October 15th, 1944. We were here. Emma closed the journal and looked at the headstone. Simple black granite with 3 names, their ages at death, and a single line. They flew home together. The investigation would continue. Some measure of justice might come, but the real victory had already been won. 3 boys who'd been erased from history were remembered. Their murders were acknowledged. Their courage was honored. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Danny and Frankie and Bobby were finally, truly home.